They walked into that bar as two sisters looking for nothing more than a quiet night. But within minutes, they became targets, picked apart by eyes that saw their black skin as an invitation, their womanhood as something to claim, and their dignity as something to crush. And the worst part? Everyone watched, everyone heard the threats, everyone saw the hands that shouldn't have touched them, yet no one spoke. The town that claimed to believe in justice stayed silent as two innocent women were dragged into a nightmare built from power, racism, and violence. What those crooked officers didn't know was this. The women they tried to break were federal agents, women who had survived far worse than drunken cowards with badges. Women who, even in cuffs, could see every crack in the system, every lie, every cover-up, every life ruined before theirs. This story isn't just about what happened to them. It's about everything this town tried to bury. It's about the corruption that rotted its foundations. It's about the night when the truth finally rose to the surface and refused to be silenced again. If you think you've heard stories about police brutality before, if you think you know how far corruption can go, if you believe justice always wins, you need to hear what happened next. Because the moment these officers realized who they had laid their hands on, their world began to collapse. Stay with me. This story will shake you. It will anger you. It will break your heart. And by the end, you will understand why this fight, our fight, can never stop. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the stories that expose the truth, honor the survivors, and shine a light on injustice. You're going to want to see how this one ends. You think you're in charge here? The neon sign above Vega's corner flickered like it was tired of surviving the Louisiana heat. The air outside was swamp thick, clinging to skin, making even a simple breath feel heavy. Inside, though, the Friday night hum was lively enough. Old school blues pouring from the speakers, glasses clinking in easy rhythm, the kind of atmosphere that made strangers feel familiar and locals feel safe. Or at least that was the lie everyone pretended held true. Naomi Mitchell could taste the humidity even in her drink, a watered-down whiskey she'd barely sipped. She leaned back in her chair, watching the crowd with the tense alertness of someone who had spent too long seeing danger where others saw comfort. Her sister Leah mirrored her posture, one leg crossed, hands wrapped around a cold glass, chin lifted with quiet curiosity. They were identical in face but different in presence. Naomi radiated fire. Leah held storms behind her silence. They hadn't been home in years. Brookridge, Louisiana, was a place that held both their earliest joys and their earliest lessons in fear. Tonight was supposed to be simple, returning to honor their uncle's memory, sharing a drink in the bar he used to visit after community meetings. Just two sisters taking a breath between grief and duty. But grief never travels alone in a town like this, and duty had a way of finding them long before they were ready. The door swung open with a blast of humid air, and three off-duty officers stepped inside, the kind of men who didn't need their uniforms to remind the room who they were. Sergeant Travis Reed entered first, broad-shouldered, red-faced and mean in that lazy Southern way that always seemed to sharpen when he looked at black women. Behind him came officers Brad Miller and Ty Dixon, Brad already half drunk, Ty trying too hard to look like the others. Naomi saw the shift before anyone else, the way conversation softened, the way shoulders straightened. The way the bartender, Carlos Vega, stopped wiping glasses and simply watched. Power entering a room always brought silence with it, even disguised as laughter. Travis's gaze found the sisters instantly. Something in his expression twisted. Recognition? Interest? Entitlement? Maybe all three. Well, look at that, he drawled loud enough for half the bar to hear. Didn't know Brookridge ordered dessert tonight? Brad snorted. Ty murmured something crude under his breath, and all three started walking toward the sisters' table. Naomi didn't move. Leah didn't blink. They had seen this dance before, back when they were teenage girls trying to ride home without being followed, or young women trying to get through college without being touched. But this time was different. They weren't kids anymore. They weren't powerless. Yet not even their FBI training, not even all the cases they'd worked, had prepared them for how quickly Reed would strip the room of oxygen. "Well now," he said, planting a hand on their table, "y'all new in town or just dressed like you want attention?" The words weren't surprising. It was the tone, the lazy ownership, the assumption that made Leah's jaw tighten. "Just having a drink," Naomi replied calmly. "Mind giving us some space?" Travis chuckled, leaning in so close Naomi could smell the sweat and liquor on his breath. "Now that's cute. You think you're in charge here?" Brad stepped behind Leah's chair, resting his heavy hand on the backrest, fingers tapping slowly as if testing a boundary he had already decided to break. Ty swayed slightly. "Damn. Identical twins," he muttered. "Double the trouble, double the chocolate." A nearby woman grabbed her purse and slipped out the back door without a word. Others stared at their drinks. Carlos, from behind the bar, clenched his jaw but didn't intervene. Yet. "Last warning," Naomi said, her voice cutting through the music as cleanly as a blade. "Walk away." Her tone wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It had the steady confidence of someone who had built her life resisting men like this. But confidence meant nothing to a man who believed the world had handpicked him to rule it. Travis dragged a chair from a nearby table, the screech piercing the room's silence. He flipped it around and straddled it, leaning in so close Naomi felt his breath on her cheek. "You got attitude," he said. "I like that. Shows you still need teaching." Brad's hand slid from Leah's chair to her shoulders, squeezing just enough to draw a flinch she didn't want to give him. "Don't touch me," Leah said quietly. Controlled, precise, dangerous. Ty let out a sloppy whistle. "Oh, she's feisty." Carlos finally approached with a tray of empty glasses, forcing his presence into the circle. "Evening, officers. Everything all right here?" Travis didn't look at him. "Carlos, go wash a counter before I decide to check your paperwork again." A threat dressed like a casual suggestion. Carlos froze. The tray shook in his hands. For a moment, Naomi thought he might walk away, but he didn't. "Sergeant, this isn't the place for—" "Don't finish that sentence," Travis snapped. Silence swallowed the bar. Ty leaned down toward Leah. "You're asking for attention dressing like that." Leah's fingers tightened around her glass. Naomi saw the flare in her sister's eyes, the spark of pain mixed with fury. Still, she stayed seated. Still, they waited, because reacting too soon could kill them, and reacting too late would kill the last piece of dignity they still held. Travis noticed Naomi's hand drifting toward her purse. "What's in there?" he asked. "Something you want to show me?" "Lipstick," Naomi replied, unshaken, "though I doubt it's your shade." Brad squeezed Leah's shoulders harder. "No respect," he muttered. "Good thing we know how to fix that." A young man at a corner table lifted his phone. Brad moved fast, faster than anyone expected, and snatched it from his hand. "No cameras." The phone shattered against the floor. Something inside Leah cracked at the same time. Travis leaned back, smiling like a man who believed he had already won. "Now, here's what's going to happen," he said. "You two are going to apologize. Buy us drinks. And maybe if you're real sweet, we'll forget all this attitude." Naomi exhaled slowly. "Here's what's actually going to happen," she said. "You're going to step away. Now." Even Carlos held his breath. Travis's smirk deepened. That sounded like a threat. The room felt like it was falling, and the sisters knew. This night was about to turn into every nightmare they thought they had outgrown. Harassment, assault, arrest. Travis let the silence stretch like he was savoring it. Men like him loved the moment right before they decided what kind of damage they were going to do. Brad shifted his weight behind Leah, fingers digging into the back of her chair. Ty rocked on his heels, eyes flicking between the sisters and the rest of the bar, drunk enough not to care, sober enough to understand that everyone was watching and no one was going to help. Yeah, Travis said finally, tilting his head. That did sound like a threat. Naomi's heart thudded once, hard, but her face stayed calm. Leah's gaze never left his, dark and steady. Walk away, Naomi repeated. That's not a threat. That's mercy. Brad laughed, a low, ugly sound. Mercy, huh? Hear that, Sarge? These girls think they're handing out mercy. Travis leaned closer until his nose was almost touching Naomi's. Sweetheart, he murmured, voice soaked in whiskey and arrogance. There's not a single thing in this town you're in charge of. Not tonight. Not ever. His hand shot out faster than anyone was expecting, snatching an empty chair from the next table and dragging it across the floor. The screech made half the bar flinch. He spun it around, straddled it backward, arms draped over the backrest like he owned the place. Like he owned them. Brad's hand slid from the chair to Leah's shoulders, heavy and possessive. She went still, not with fear, but with calculation. Don't touch me, she said, each word clipped, measured, a warning disguised as a request. Brad squeezed harder. Or what? You gonna call the cops? Ty burst out laughing. A couple of men at the bar chuckled nervously, the sound dying as soon as they heard themselves. Carlos appeared at the table then, tray of empty glasses in hand, knuckles white around the metal. Gentlemen, he started carefully, maybe we all just need to… Shut it, Carlos, Travis snapped without looking at him. Go polish a bottle or something. Before I start wondering who you got working in that kitchen after hours, the implication hung in the air like smoke. Immigration, raids, people taken without warning. Carlos's face flushed, but his feet stayed planted. This is my place, he said, voice low but steady. I don't want trouble here. Ty lurched forward, bumping the table, sloshing the sisters' drinks. Trouble, he echoed. We're just talking. That what passes for trouble now? Couple of girls acting a little uppity? Leah's fingers tightened on her glass. Naomi saw the tiny tremor in her sister's hand, the one no one else would notice. It wasn't fear. It was the effort it took not to break the glass in her palm. Ty leaned down, bringing his face inches from Leah's. Beside, he added, eyes dragging along her body, you walk in here in those shorts. You're basically begging for attention. Naomi's hand started to move toward her purse on instinct, toward her badge, toward her training, toward the part of her that knew exactly how to end this. Leah caught her eye and gave the smallest shake of her head. Not yet. They'd been in rooms like this before, miles away from home. They knew how quickly a disorderly conduct could become resisting arrest, how fast a misunderstanding could become a funeral. They also knew every witness in this bar had their own quiet war to fight. Asking them to step in was asking them to risk everything. Travis saw the exchange and smiled like he'd won something. What's in the purse? When he asked. Something you want to share with the rest of the class? Just my lipstick, Naomi said smoothly. Though I doubt it's your shade. Something cold flashed in his eyes. You know what your problem is? Brad muttered, fingers digging into Leah's muscles. No respect for authority. Lucky for you, that's a teachable offense. A young man at a corner table raised his phone again, angling it toward them with careful shaking hands. Ty noticed this time. He pushed away from the table, stumbling over a bar stool as he lunged. Hey, the kid protested. Ty ripped the phone from his grip and hurled it at the hardwood. The crack of glass echoed through the bar. The shattered screen skittered across the floor like a broken truth. No cameras, Ty announced, chest heaving. You want to film something? Go watch Netflix. The kid sat down, face pale. No one moved to help him. No one said a word. Naomi swallowed the bitter taste of it. She had watched hours of shaky phone footage in D.C., videos people risked everything to capture. But here in her town, A phone couldn't even survive 10 seconds pointed at a cop. Travis's smile slid away piece by piece. "All right," he said. "New plan. You two are gonna stand up nice and slow, apologize for disrespecting us, and buy a round for the table. Then maybe we forget you came in here thinking you run things." Naomi took a breath, tasting fear and fury and something harder beneath them both. "No," she said. He blinked. "What?" "We're not apologizing for existing," Leah added quietly, "or for not wanting hands on us." A vein throbbed in Travis's temple. "That's enough," he said, standing so fast the chair tipped. In 3 strides, he was behind Leah. The slap came so sudden the sound landed before the pain did. His hand connected with Leah's backside, a sharp, explosive crack that ricocheted through the bar. For a moment, even the music seemed to cut out. Leah shot up from her chair, her face flushing with humiliation and rage. "You son of a—" Naomi moved on instinct, half out of her seat, every muscle screaming to put her body between her sister and the man who had just treated her like meat. Brad was faster. He slammed Naomi hard into the wall, the impact knocking the air from her lungs. Her cheek scraped rough wood. She tasted splinters and copper and remembered for a split second another wall, another officer, 16 years old with her school backpack still on. Brad's forearm pressed across her collarbone, pinning her in place. "What's the matter?" Travis taunted, stepping in close to Leah again. "Can't take a compliment from an officer of the law?" Leah knocked his hand away when he reached for her again. "Touch me one more time," she said, voice shaking with barely contained rage, "and you're going to regret it." Ty had his handcuffs out now, swinging them on one finger like a toy. The clink of metal sounded louder than the music, louder than the blood pounding in Naomi's ears. "Ooh, that sounds like a threat, Sarge," Ty said. "You hear that? Threatening an officer?" "Sure did," Brad agreed, pressing Naomi harder against the wall. Her shoulders burned. Her wrists ached beneath his grip. "Serious offense around here." Carlos stepped forward again, voice cracking. "They haven't done anything. Let me call them a cab. They—" Travis whirled on him and closed the distance in 2 strides, grabbing the bartender by the collar and shoving him against the bar. "You say one more word," he hissed, "and I'll have ICE and the health department crawl through this place until there's nothing left but dust and memories. You understand me?" Carlos's throat bobbed. His hands clenched into fists, then slowly opened. He backed away. Naomi wanted to scream at him not to tell him to stand his ground. But she knew better. She knew the cost he'd already paid just for speaking up once. Ty moved behind Leah, yanking her arms back. The metal snapped around her wrists, cold and unforgiving. He cinched the cuffs too tight on purpose, smirking when she hissed in pain. "Not so feisty now, huh?" he murmured. Brad twisted Naomi's arms behind her back with practiced cruelty. The cuffs bit into her skin, sparks of pain shooting up to her shoulders. All around them, people stared into their drinks, into their phones, into nothing. A woman near the door raised her phone just enough to catch the scene. Ty spotted her and strode over, snatching it from her trembling hand. "No camera," he repeated, this time throwing it into the trash can behind the bar. "Last warning." Carlos didn't flinch. His apron pocket felt suddenly heavy against his thigh, where a small red recording light blinked steadily, hidden from view. Travis stepped back, admiring his work. 2 black women cuffed and surrounded, breathing hard, cheeks flushed, eyes still blazing, even as their bodies were forced into submission. "Look at that," he said. "All that mouth, all that attitude, and here you are, right where you belong." The words felt like chains. Leah shifted, fingers straining behind her back. The slim leather case of her badge dug into her hip, trapped between denim and steel. She twisted her wrist just enough to hook the edge of it with 2 fingers. "Careful," Ty warned. "You're not in charge of anything you touch anymore." Leah ignored him. The case slid, millimeter by millimeter, until gravity did the rest. It fell to the floor with a dull thud that somehow sounded louder than the broken glass had. The golden shield flashed as it landed face up, catching the bar's dim light. The bold letters were unmistakable. Federal Bureau of Investigation. For the first time that night, the room truly went silent. Leah straightened, shoulders squaring despite the cuffs biting into her skin. "Special Agent Leah Mitchell," she said, voice cutting through the thick air. "Civil Rights Division. That's my badge." Naomi lifted her chin, breath coming heavy but controlled. "Special Agent Naomi Mitchell," she added. "You're assaulting federal officers." Murmurs rippled through the bar. People turned fully now, no longer able to pretend this was just another ugly scene in a small-town night. Some raised their hands halfway, uncertain, torn between fear and the desperate need to witness. Travis stared at the badge for a long heartbeat, his booze-flushed face frozen. Something flickered in his expression. Not remorse, not fear, but rage at the idea that the women he'd chosen to humiliate might actually outrank him. Then he laughed. The sound was harsh, forced, scraping along the nerves of everyone who heard it. "Ain't that cute," he said, stepping forward and kicking the badge case. It skidded across the floor, stopping near a table leg. "You think that fancy little card changes anything here?" His voice dropped lower, heavy with contempt. "This is my town," he murmured. "My rules." He nodded to Ty and Brad, eyes never leaving the sisters' faces. "Get them out of here." The patrons parted as if dragged by an invisible tide. Naomi and Leah were shoved toward the door, wrists aching, shoulders throbbing, humiliation burning through every inch of them. Outside, the night air hit like a slap, hot and sticky. The parking lot lights cast harsh shadows, turning the scene into something out of a nightmare. A patrol car idled by the curb, engine rumbling, as if it had been waiting for them all along. Brad shoved Naomi so hard she stumbled. Her cuffed hands shot back to catch herself and couldn't. Leah leaned toward her instinctively, their shoulders bumping, balance shared like it had been their whole lives. Behind them, through the bar's windows, faces watched, worried, curious, afraid. Carlos stood in the doorway, apron pocket glowing with a tiny red light beneath the fabric. Naomi kept her eyes forward, jaw clenched, wrists throbbing. "They have no idea who they're messing with," she whispered to Leah, voice raw, threaded with something deeper than anger. Not a threat, a promise. "The machine is hungry." The station smelled of old coffee, disinfectant, and something harder to name. Something sour, metallic, the lingering scent of fear left behind by every person who had been dragged through its doors. Naomi felt it hit her first, that thick air of institutional violence, a silence designed to swallow any voice raised against it. Leah stepped beside her, her wrists cuffed behind her back, eyes scanning the dim hallway as if cataloging every shadow. Travis and the others marched them forward with a swagger that wasn't confidence but ownership. This was their hive, their kingdom, and the sisters were being delivered like an offering to a hungry machine. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering faintly as they passed. Their harsh glow carved sharp edges into every surface, worn desks, bulletin boards cluttered with outdated notices, and a booking area that felt less like a checkpoint and more like a final gate before the world fell away. "Welcome home," Travis said, his voice slurring only slightly as he tightened his grip on Leah's arm. "Ain't much, but it's where you'll be spending the night." His breath, heavy with whiskey, made Leah's stomach twist. Not from disgust, but from the recognition of what men like him believed they were entitled to. Naomi steadied herself, breathing slow, methodical, the way she had been trained. Her wrists throbbed where the metal cut into her skin, and every step echoed with the reminder that this was not the FBI's clean, controlled environment. This was the underbelly, the place where the law twisted itself into whatever shape men like Travis needed. Behind the booking desk sat a desk sergeant who didn't bother lifting his head until Travis called out, Got a couple of troublemakers for you. The sergeant glanced up, eyes dull, uninterested. Charges? We'll write 'em, Travis said casually. Make it look good. Figures, the sergeant muttered, returning to his crossword puzzle, barely glancing at the women in cuffs before him. He had seen this scene too many times to question it, or cared too little. Leah swallowed a surge of anger, forcing her voice into something level. We are federal agents. You are detaining us illegally. The sergeant didn't even blink. Honey, he drawled, you're in Brookridge now. Federal don't mean much here. Brad laughed behind her, low and triumphant. Ain't that the truth? Naomi felt the words settle inside her like a stone. She had known corruption, studied it, investigated it, testified on it. But knowing and standing inside it were two different worlds. Here in this narrow hallway, where the lights hummed and the doors loomed like silent warnings, she felt the weight of a system engineered not by accident, but by design. A system that had swallowed people like her parents, like their neighbors, like half the people she grew up with. Travis shoved Leah toward the holding cells. Let's get this over with. The cells were cold, concrete, and deliberately dehumanizing. Metal bars cast long shadows across the floor. The air inside was stagnant, thick with the ghosts of the people who had been trapped here before them. Cell 1, Travis ordered. Ty unlocked it with a flourish, the metal hinge screaming as it swung open. Leah stumbled forward as he pushed her inside, hitting the concrete wall shoulder first before catching herself. She turned slowly, eyes burning, jaw tight with the humiliation they kept forcing her to swallow. And Cell 2, Brad said, yanking Naomi's arm so hard her knees buckled. When he shoved her into the second cell, she hit the ground hard, palms scraping across the cold floor. Careful, Brad said mockingly. Wouldn't want you hurting yourself. The door slammed shut behind her, the lock clicking like a verdict. Naomi rose slowly, breathing through the pain, lifting herself to her feet with deliberate dignity. She faced the bars separating her from Leah. Despite everything, despite the bruises already forming along Naomi's jaw and Leah's wrists swelling purple beneath the cuffs, both sisters stood tall. Travis drew closer, hands clasped behind his back, adopting the smug posture of a man who believed he had stripped his prey of every last defense. Now, he said conversationally, what kind of charges should we cook up for y'all? Leah stepped forward, fingers curling around the bars. You lay a hand on those forms and you demand nothing, a new voice cut in. Chief Roland Coulter entered like a storm held tightly inside a man-shaped frame. His uniform was impeccably pressed, silver hair combed neatly, expression carved from cold marble. Power radiated off him, not the loud, sloppy power of Travis and his friends, but the smooth, cruel authority of a man who had built this machine and fed it well. I hear we've got ourselves some federal agents, Coulter said mildly, lifting the half-written paperwork from Travis's hands. He scanned it with a faint, almost amused smile. Quite the list you boys put together. Leah stepped closer to the bars. Chief Coulter, your officers assaulted us in a bar, dragged us here without cause, and are now fabricating charges. We will not. Coulter's gaze flicked toward her, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. You misunderstand, he said softly. You don't get to demand anything in my town. He walked slowly down the hall, studying each sister like a surgeon preparing incisions. You see, he continued, voice calm but edged with something dangerous, outsiders like you sometimes come through here thinking your titles mean something, thinking you can poke around, ask questions, shine lights. He stopped in front of Naomi's cell. In Brookridge, lights have a way of going out. Naomi felt a chill crawl across her skin, but her expression stayed unmoved. This is illegal detention, she said, and you know it. Illegal? Coulter repeated. No, no. These ladies, he lifted the paperwork, your iron are being charged with disorderly conduct, disturbing the peace, resisting arrest. He gave a thin, satisfied smile. All very believable. Leah's voice sharpened. This is corruption. Coulter's smile widened. Slow, cold, unbothered. Corruption, he murmured. Such an ugly word. He leaned in close, lowering his voice to something intimate and terrifying. I prefer maintaining order. My order. The words slid into the room like poison. Naomi stared at him, stunned by how deeply the rot ran. And yet beneath the horror, something else sparked. Something hot, controlled, steady. Resolve. Coulter tapped the bars lightly, like he was locking away two pieces of evidence instead of two human beings. Get comfortable, he said. You'll be here a while. Then he turned, leaving the sisters standing in cages built not just of metal, but of a system that had been swallowing people like them for generations. They were alone, but they were not broken. Not yet. The long night, the act of being broken. The hours inside the cell didn't pass. They dragged. Time in custody wasn't measured by minutes or hours, Naomi thought. It was measured by sounds. The distant ring of a phone that no one would answer for you. The squeak of a chair, the shuffle of paperwork that decided your fate. The metallic jingle of keys that always came with a question. Are they coming to help or to hurt? Right now it was the clock. A cheap wall clock hung crooked above the booking desk, its second hand ticking with cruel, unhurried patience. 11:47 p.m. when they were shoved into their cells. The kind of hour where decent people were home, and people like Travis and his crew were just getting started. Naomi gripped the bars that separated her from Leah's cell. The paint was chipped, the metal cool under her bruised fingers. Leah sat stiffly on the narrow metal bunk, back against the wall, eyes fixed on the hallway, like she was watching an enemy advance in slow motion. You okay? Naomi asked softly. Leah let out a dry, humorless breath. Define okay. Naomi's lips twitched despite everything. If they could still make space for bitter jokes, they weren't done yet. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. An officer approached, younger than the others, carrying 2 paper bags and paper cups of water, balanced precariously on top. Her dark hair was pulled into a tight bun, uniform crisp, expression carefully neutral. Naomi remembered catching a glimpse of her earlier, standing near the booking desk with her jaw clenched, eyes refusing to meet the twins. Now she stopped in front of Naomi's cell. Dinner, she said at normal volume, voice flat. Standard issue sandwich and chips. Her nameplate read Morales. Naomi stepped closer, accepting the paper bag through the slot. Their fingers brushed, just a second of contact, and she felt something thin and folded slide against her palm. A small, deliberate pressure, a choice. Morales didn't look up. She moved to Leah's cell and repeated the process. Waters in cups, she said. Fountains out of order again. At normal volume, it sounded like nothing. Her eyes flicked to the security camera in the corner, then back. Her next words came out barely above a breath. Don't trust anyone here, she whispered. This isn't the first time. Leah's fingers tightened on the paper cup. She didn't react otherwise, didn't dare. Thank you, officer, she said aloud, letting her shoulders sag as if the weight of the day had finally crushed her. Morales straightened, mask snapping back into place. Eat, she said. You'll need it. She walked away, footsteps fading toward the front of the station. Naomi held the bag like it might explode, pulse loud in her ears. She waited until she heard the murmur of voices in the distance, chairs scraping, the soft ding of an email notification at the desk. Only then did she sit on the bunk and slowly unfold her fingers beneath the thin blanket. A scrap of receipt paper, torn and folded twice. On it, in tiny, precise handwriting, a phone number and 3 words. Emergency FBI contact. Below that, a name. Deputy Director Marcus Chen. Naomi stared at it for a moment that felt like it stretched across years. She remembered the first time she'd heard Chen's voice, years ago, measured, sharp, asking her why she wanted to work civil rights. She'd told him the truth, because the law had failed her family, and she wanted to see what it looked like when it didn't. Leah's voice came from the next cell, soft and steady. "What is it?" Naomi lifted the scrap to the bars between them, just high enough for Leah to see. Leah's eyes widened slightly, the smallest crack in her controlled mask. "He knows about them," Naomi murmured. "He's the one who greenlit our quiet look into Brookridge. Morales must have overheard something, or seen enough on her own." Leah tore off a strip of the paper bag, memorized the number, then chewed the receipt scrap and swallowed it dry. No evidence left, just a sequence of digits burned into their minds. "We just have to survive the night," she said. Naomi nodded, even as the words felt fragile in the stale air. The sandwich tasted like cardboard. The chips were stale. They ate every bite. Strength wasn't optional. Outside their cells, the station slowly quieted. An officer yawned at the desk. Someone laughed at something on a phone. The wall clock trudged its way past midnight. The desk sergeant came by twice, walking the hall, glancing in with the bored disdain of a man who'd long ago stopped seeing people. Only problems. The second time, Leah was lying on her bunk, turned toward the wall, shoulders curled forward in a convincing slump. Naomi sat hunched on her own bunk, staring at the floor like her spirit had drained out of her. The sergeant smirked. "Knew they'd fold," Naomi heard him mutter. He walked away. As soon as his footsteps faded, Leah rolled onto her back, eyes open, laser-focused. "Overconfident," she whispered. "Sloppy," Naomi answered. The clock read 2:13 a.m. when the real shift came. Heavy footsteps, multiple sets. Laughter, low and mean, carried down the corridor before the men themselves appeared. Travis, Brad, Ty. The smell of bourbon hit first. "Man, I needed this," Ty said, the clinking of glass bottles punctuating his words. "After dealing with those stuck-up feds." "They're not feds," Brad scoffed. "Not in here. In here, they're just bodies in cages." Naomi lay very still, eyes closed to slits, breath slow and even. She shifted only as much as she needed to angle her torso slightly, just enough that the tiny mic sewn into her bra strap pointed toward the booking area. That mic was standard civil rights field equipment. Normally it documented interviews, on-the-ground observations, community stories. Tonight it was something else. A loaded weapon. She felt the faint vibration against her ribs as it sent live data out to secure servers, each word encrypted and stored. As long as the internal battery held, as long as no one ripped her clothes, they had a witness that couldn't be intimidated into silence. She'd think that badge was going to save her. Travis's voice drifted down the hallway, closer now, flashing it in my bar like she owns the place. Laughter, ice clinking in cups, a chair scraping across tile. "Like that teacher," Ty said, voice rising with drunken bravado. "Remember her? The one who screamed about you choking her kid out?" Travis snorted. "That one? Please. Took one baggie of coke in her desk to make her real quiet. School board couldn't get rid of her fast enough." Brad chuckled, low and satisfied. "Chief called it preventive maintenance. Can't have folks thinking they can challenge us." Naomi's stomach turned, but she kept her breathing steady. She let her face stay slack, eyes half-lidded, the very picture of exhausted defeat. Inside, she was memorizing every word. Dates, names, schools, streets. Leah listened too. Her bunk faced the polished metal toilet, and in its warped reflection, she could see just enough of the booking area to note who sat where, which bottle belonged to which man, the approximate timestamp she'd file away later. Her mind moved like a camera, like a ledger. Best one was still that family on Maple, Brad said, sipping loudly. 3 generations in that house till we helped the development company out a little. Ty laughed. That coffee shop is nice, though. You're welcome, Brookridge, Travis said, raising his glass in a mock toast. We clean up the trash, we get a new latte spot out of the deal. Everybody wins. Not everybody, Leah thought. Just you. They kept talking about problem neighborhoods that needed pressure, about losing body cam footage, about judges who owed them favors, and a mayor who liked her numbers low and her donors happy. Every word sank like a stone into Naomi's memory, even as the mic caught it all. At one point, Ty's voice shifted, more animated. What about those two? He asked. Think they learned yet? In the cells? Travis let out a derisive huff. You saw 'em, already curling in on themselves. By morning, they'll be begging to sign whatever we put in front of them. Just like the rest. Silence pressed against the bars of their cells like a physical weight. Naomi remained still. Leah didn't move. They had been taught that in Quantico too. How to play helpless, how to look broken, how to make predators underestimate you. They had learned it long before that, though. In classrooms where teachers called on the white kids first, on sidewalks where they crossed the street when they saw cruisers rolling slow, in small-town shops where security guards trailed them through every aisle. Playing small had been survival long before it became tactic. The bourbon-fueled boasting went on, stretching into what felt like hours. Finally, chairs scraped, bottles clinked together. Shift change soon, Travis muttered. Let's clear this out. Their footsteps receded. The station woke slowly around them as dawn crept closer. Phones ringing, doors opening, voices blending into a dull buzz. Somewhere outside, a bird called, its notes faint through the narrow window high on the wall. Naomi opened her eyes fully and turned her head toward the bars between them. Leah was already watching her, eyes bright in the dim light. You get it? Leah breathed. Every word, Naomi whispered back, and so did the bureau servers. Leah let out a slow breath that trembled just slightly at the end. Then we're not just fighting for us anymore, she said. We're holding their whole world in a wire no bigger than a thread. Naomi shifted on the bunk, wrists aching, shoulders sore, heart pounding but steady. We just have to get it out, she said, and make it impossible to bury. The clock above the desk clicked over to 6:01 a.m. The long night was ending, but the war it had opened was only just beginning. The FBI betrayal. By the time the sun rose, thin and pale through the high window, the sisters had already rehearsed the call in their minds 100 times. Marcus Chen was the one name they trusted, the one person in Washington who had never wavered, never played politics with the truth. He had mentored them, defended them, fought for them. If there was anyone who could pull them out of this hell, it was him. Officer Morales returned just past 7:10 a.m., balancing breakfast trays with the same forced neutrality she'd shown the night before. Her hands trembled, barely, but enough for Naomi to see. When the corridor cleared, Morales leaned in close. It has to be now, she whispered. I can give you 5 minutes, no more. Leah stood slowly, bracing herself on the cold bars. Where? File room, Morales murmured. Far hall, left door, landlines behind the cabinet. Cameras don't reach the corner. Naomi nodded, feeling her pulse rise. 5 minutes. Enough for one chance? Enough to call Chen? Enough to save their lives? Morales fumbled with the keys loudly to keep up the pretense, then unlocked Naomi's cell first. Holt wants updated statements, she said loudly, voice carrying to the bullpen. Gotta bring them in one at a time. She slipped the key into Leah's cell next and whispered, Move! The hallway felt endless as they were led through it, their bare feet cold against the concrete. Every door they passed felt like another mouth in a long, hungry beast waiting to swallow them back down. Morales pushed open the file room door, ushered them inside. 3 minutes now, she hissed. 5 if they stall at the front desk. She stationed herself at the doorway, body blocking the view, posture deceptively casual. Naomi hurried toward the far corner. The old beige landline sat crooked on a metal shelf, half buried under outdated personnel files. She dialed by memory, the number she'd memorized last night, each digit like a lifeline. 3 rings, 4. On the 5th, "This is Chen." Relief surged so fiercely Naomi nearly swayed. "Deputy Director, it's Agent Naomi Mitchell." Her voice came out in a whisper, breathless, frayed at the edges. "We need help. We're being held. We have evidence. Massive corruption, multiple officers confessing." "Mitchell?" Chen interrupted, his voice tightening. Something in his tone made her pause. "Where are you calling from?" "A local station, Brookridge PD. Sir, listen. Travis Hollins, Brad Mercer, Tyler Crawford, they attacked us, detained us without cause. They're charging us with—" "Stop talking," Chen ordered sharply. Leah's head snapped up. Naomi froze. Chen's next words chilled the room. "I've already spoken to Chief Roland Coulter." The world seemed to tilt. Naomi's stomach dropped so hard her breath caught. "He tells me," Chen continued, each word slow, deliberate, "that you two caused a scene, assaulted officers, resisted arrest." "That's a lie," Leah burst out. "Sir, they—" "Enough," Chen snapped. His voice wasn't merely cold. It was distant, calculated. The voice of a man closing a door to protect himself. "Listen carefully," he said. "Whatever you think you recorded, whatever you believe you have, forget it." Naomi stared at the phone like it had turned into a weapon. "Sir," she said, voice cracking, "this department is committing civil rights violations on a scale we've never seen. Falsified evidence, extortion, brutality, disappearances. And some battles," Chen cut in, "are not worth fighting." Naomi felt the blow physically, as if the words themselves had struck her. Leah stepped forward. "They're going to kill us, sir. They have already targeted witnesses, destroyed evidence. I am giving you advice that will save your careers," Chen said, tone eerily calm. "Drop this case. Walk away. Do not push this any further." Naomi gripped the receiver harder until her knuckles blanched. "Sir, you trained us to fight cases like this, and now I'm telling you to let it go." The finality in his voice was unmistakable. It wasn't fear speaking, it was allegiance. Allegiance to power, allegiance to protection, allegiance to everything they had sworn to fight. "Sir," Naomi whispered, voice fractured, "please." "This is an order, Agent Mitchell." The line clicked. He had hung up. The silence afterward felt suffocating. Leah closed her eyes for a single beat, jaw tightening, breath shaking. Naomi stared at the dead receiver like it was a severed lifeline dangling in her hand. Morales turned, fear flashing across her face. "Someone's coming. We have to go." They moved quickly back toward the cells, but the moment they entered the hallway, heavy footsteps thundered toward them. Travis rounded the corner first. He was holding a phone. Their blood went cold. "Well, well," he drawled, waving the screen with a lazy grin. "Got myself an interesting call from your FBI boss." Leah went rigid. "What did he say?" Naomi demanded, voice shaking with fury that burned hotter than fear. Travis grinned wider. "Said you two are problem agents, always stirring up trouble. Said we should handle this locally." Leah lunged at the bars so hard she rattled the metal. "You're lying." "Oh no," Travis said, eyes gleaming with sick triumph. "He said y'all need a lesson in respect, and that we should take our time making sure it sticks." Leah's fist slammed against the bars so violently the clang vibrated through the walls. "You corrupt piece of—" Travis wagged his finger like she was an unruly child. Careful, sweetheart. Would hate for your file to look worse than it already does. Naomi didn't move, didn't blink. Her rage had gone deadly quiet. She looked at Travis like someone studying the barrel of a gun they intended to wrestle from the shooter's hands. Then she said 4 words in a voice cold enough to freeze bone. Then we burn them all. The corridor fell into a shocked silence. For a moment, a single fragile moment, Travis's smirk flickered. Because her words weren't desperation, they were promise. They were prophecy. They were the moment a spark realized it could become a wildfire. Travis recovered with a snort and swaggered back down the hall. But Naomi and Leah stood at the bars, eyes blazing. They had lost their ally. They had lost their protection. They had lost the system they believed in. But they had not lost their purpose. And they were done begging for mercy. Underground resistance gathering. The cells were quieter after Travis left, but the quiet didn't comfort. It suffocated. It pressed in on Naomi and Leah like a second set of walls, thick and airless. Betrayal had a sound, Naomi realized. It wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It was the hollow ring inside your ribs when the one person you believed in chose power over truth. Leah sat on the bunk with her head bowed, elbows on her knees, palms pressed together like she was holding herself in place. She wasn't crying. She was past crying, past shock, past disbelief. Her voice came out low, the kind of voice a person uses when something inside them has shifted permanently. He knew, she whispered. Chen knew exactly what they were doing. Naomi closed her eyes. And he didn't just ignore it. He sided with them. Leah's throat worked. How many did he let disappear before us? Naomi leaned her forehead against the bars between their cells. Their hands reached out, fingers brushing through cold metal until their palms pressed, warm against warm, an anchor in the storm. We're on our own, Naomi murmured. No, Leah corrected. We're not dead yet. Their grip tightened. It wasn't hope, it was defiance. When Morales returned mid-afternoon, her face was drawn tight with exhaustion. She unlocked the slot to give them water, but her hands shook so badly she sloshed some onto the floor. They're talking about transferring you tonight, she whispered, barely moving her lips. Calder wants you somewhere, nobody asks questions. Leah swallowed hard. Like where? Morales shook her head. I don't know, but I've seen paperwork like this before. People don't come back. The words landed like a stone thrown into dark water. Naomi halted her breathing for half a beat. How much time do we have? Hours, maybe less. Morales looked up suddenly, eyes burning with something like courage wrapped in fear. But you're not the first ones they've done this to. And you won't be the last. People have been collecting proof, watching, waiting. She slid a small note through the slot, larger than the one from last night, folded into a tight square. This is the name of someone who can help, someone who's been tracking them for years. Naomi unfolded it slowly. Maya Green, investigative reporter, the Southern Ledger. Leah frowned. A journalist? Not just a journalist, Morales said. She's been digging into Brookridge corruption so long, the entire department tried to blacklist her. She's stubborn, smart, brave. Morales swallowed. Too brave. Naomi exchanged a tense look with Leah. And you trust her? Morales nodded. I trust anyone who hasn't turned a blind eye. Then she leaned closer, voice dropping lower still. Carlos Vega contacted her. He has proof. Video, dates, recordings, years worth. Leah's eyes snapped up. Carlos had cameras? Hidden ones, Morales replied. He put them in after the department targeted him the first time. He knew something like this would happen again. Naomi felt her breath hitch. The bar, the whole night captured. Every threat, every touch, every slur. Evidence. Real, undeniable, horrifying evidence. Where's Carlos now? Leah asked. At his place. He's scared, but he's not running. Morales hesitated. He said he'll meet you if you can get out. Pain shot through Naomi's chest. We're trapped. Morales straightened suddenly as footsteps echoed down the hall. I'm working on that, she whispered, then raised her voice. Your water. She disappeared, leaving the sisters clutching the one thing they'd gained in 24 hours of hell. A name. A lifeline. Night cast itself over the jail like a shroud. The walls creaked with the cooling of metal. Somewhere, a drunk in another cell snored violently. The desk sergeant yawned at the front, flipping through a sports magazine. Shift change was coming. Naomi could feel it in the air, an energy shifting. The station was always most vulnerable in the moments when one group of guards left and the next hadn't fully arrived. Paperwork distracted them. Tiredness made them sloppy. It was the perfect time for someone brave to take a risk. 5 minutes later, Morales returned, keys jingling softly. Okay, she whispered. This is it. She unlocked Naomi's cell first, then Leah's, her hands steady now, steady with decision. If we're caught, Leah began. We won't be, Morales cut in. I jammed the camera outside the file room, and I spilled coffee on the night sergeant's paperwork. He's too busy blubbering over it to check anything important. Naomi stared at her. Why are you helping us? Morales exhaled, shoulders trembling. Because my cousin disappeared after he reported to this department for beating him unconscious. Because my neighbor's son is serving 10 years for drugs that weren't his. Because I didn't sign up to be part of a machine that destroys people. She swallowed. Go. They moved fast, silent, barefoot on the cold floor, down the hall, around a corner, past a door cracked open where 2 officers argued about who was covering which shift. Morales led them out the back exit. The night air hit like freedom trying to take shape. Run straight to the side lot, Morales said. Maya's car will be waiting. I texted her. Naomi touched Morales' shoulder. You're risking everything. Morales shook her head fiercely. No, I'm reclaiming it. She stepped back and closed the door softly, locking it behind them. For a moment, Naomi and Leah stood still, hidden by the darkness at the edge of the building, hearts pounding in their ears. Then they ran. Maya Green's car was a nondescript gray sedan, parked under a flickering streetlight, engine idling. When they reached it, the back door flew open. Get in, Maya hissed. Now! Her voice was brisk, authoritative, unlike her sharp-featured face. Narrow cheeks, tired but piercing eyes behind thin glasses. She drove like she'd stolen the car, peeling out of the lot before the sisters even finished closing the doors. You're lucky Morales called when she did, Maya said, checking the mirror. They were prepping transport vans inside. Whatever they had planned for you, it wasn't a courtroom. Naomi looked at her. Why help us? Maya didn't glance away from the road. Because your story matches 50 others. Leah stiffened. 50? Maya nodded grimly. 47 confirmed? Probably more. All black, all targeted, all silenced. She reached over and slapped a stack of documents onto the center console. Look. Naomi flipped through them. Photos of bruised faces, sworn affidavits torn at the edges, police reports riddled with inconsistencies, handwritten testimonies listing names they now recognized. Sergeant Hollins, Mercer, Crawford, Chief Coulter. Each one felt like a brick added to the weight in her chest. They've been doing this for decades, Maya said. Not sloppily, systematically, and nobody had the power or the courage to expose them. Leah's voice quivered with anger. We have a recording from last night. They confessed to... Good, Maya said sharply, because we have something else too. She sped through a quiet intersection, turned onto a dirt road that led to a small house tucked behind oak trees. Judge Wilkes's house. A light was on inside. Naomi stared. He survived? Maya nodded. Barely, and he's waiting. Judge Clarence Wilkes opened the door before they could knock. Tall, silver-haired, in a worn cardigan and slacks, he looked tired, but not defeated. "Come in," he said urgently. "We don't have much time." Inside, the dining room table was covered with files, maps, photos, and stacks of binders. Carlos Vega sat at one end, face bruised, clothes smelling faintly of smoke. He stood quickly when he saw them. "Thank God," he breathed. "You're alive." Leah crossed the room in 2 strides and gripped his forearms. "Carlos, they could have killed you. They tried," he said, voice tight. "But I crawled out." Naomi flinched. "The bar? Gone." His jaw worked as he fought emotion. "All my footage was on that laptop. Every year. Every word. Burned." The grief in his voice was a wound, but Judge Wilkes stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Not all is lost," he said, placing a USB drive on the table. "I took the liberty of making backups the last time Carlos brought me evidence." Carlos's head snapped toward him. "You?" Wilkes gave a small, grim smile. "Corruption this deep leaves patterns, and I've been documenting those patterns since before you two were born." Maya added, flipping open a binder. "And I followed the money, offshore accounts, suspicious property purchases, campaign donations. They're all connected." Naomi stared at the table, a mosaic of suffering, truth, and stolen lives. "How long?" she whispered. "How long have they been doing this?" Wilkes sighed. 3 decades, maybe more." Leah lowered herself into a chair, trembling not with fear, but with fury. "And nobody stopped them?" "We tried," Wilkes said. "People who spoke up had their lives destroyed, or disappeared." His expression hardened. "Until now. Until you." Naomi blinked. "Us?" "You survived," Maya said softly. "And you fought back, and you have evidence strong enough to spark a federal civil rights case." Carlos nodded fiercely. "And you have the community behind you now. They want justice." Leah lifted her chin. "Then we give it to them." Naomi reached across the table, placing her hand on the mountain of evidence. Every file was a life. Every page was a voice. Every story was a reason to burn the whole rotten system to the ground. "We're not stopping," she said, voice steady with conviction. Wilkes's eyes gleamed with something fierce. "Good," he said, "because this is only the beginning." Retaliation, fire, blood, and framed charges. They didn't want to go back. After hours at Judge Wilkes's table, names underlined, evidence copied, backups made, the obvious instinct was to run, but Wilkes said quietly, unwavering, "If you vanish," he told them, "they'll tell you the story. 2 rogue agents, 2 angry black women who lost control. They'll bury every victim under your supposed crimes." Maya added, "They need you in plain sight, in their custody, so nobody can say you orchestrated anything from a safe house in the dark." Carlos swallowed. "If you go back," he murmured, "they can't claim you were out there setting fires and beating people half to death." Naomi and Leah understood. The system controlled the story as much as the cells. "Then we go back," Leah said quietly. During shift change, Morales drove them in, and under harsh fluorescent light, cuffed them again. "I hate this," she whispered, "but they have to believe you never left." Naomi squeezed her wrist. "They'll come for you next if they find out." Morales's jaw tightened. "Let them," she said. "I'm done being quiet." Minutes later, the sisters were back in their cells, Coulter not even glancing up as they passed, as if they'd never been gone. Across town, retaliation moved quickly. In a dark parking lot, Maya crossed toward the Southern Ledger's satellite bureau, briefcase full of files and drives. An idling van cut its engine. 3 masked men closed in. She fought, swinging the briefcase into one attacker, before a fist smashed into her stomach. "Should have minded your business," a voice growled in her ear. Boots crashed into her as she curled around the briefcase. A kick shattered her grip. Got it, another voice panted. Hurry up. They stomped her laptop, crushed her phone. Message delivered, someone muttered. They sped off, leaving her bleeding on the asphalt. By the time an ambulance came, the story she'd been building was in their hands. At Wilkes's house, breaking glass jolted him from sleep. He heard drawers yanked open, papers rustling. Bat in hand, robe hanging, he stepped into his dining room and saw masked men sweeping binders and boxes into duffel bags. Hey, he snapped. Get out of my house! A flashlight blinded him. One intruder chuckled. Old man, the intruder said with a chuckle. You should have stayed retired. Wilkes swung, connecting with an arm, before something slammed into his head and dropped him to the floor. When he woke, much of his evidence was gone, though the floorboard hiding his oldest backups remained untouched. They had taken a lot, not everything. Near 3 a.m., under the bluish buzz of the jail lights, Morales approached the cells, face ashen, clipboard clutched tight. You need to know what they're saying, she whispered. Naomi stepped to the bars. Leah joined her. What happened? Naomi asked. Maya's in intensive care, Morales said. They jumped her in a parking lot, took her briefcase, her laptop, everything. Leah's breath hitched. Is she alive? Morales said quickly. Barely. The doctors say it's a miracle. She swallowed. And Carlos, they're saying his new storage unit caught fire. Total loss. Naomi's stomach dropped. His backup drives. Gone, Morales said. And Judge Wilkes's house was hit. They took most of his physical files. Leah sagged against the bars. This happened because they helped us, she whispered. This happened because they told the truth. Morales corrected gently. That was always going to be dangerous. She drew a shaky breath. And now, they're blaming you. Both sisters went still. What do you mean? Naomi asked. Morales slid a packet through the slot. New charges. Conspiracy. Arson. Attempted murder. Leah's hands shook as she picked them up. They're claiming you arranged it, Morales said. From in here. That you have outside accomplices. That you ordered hits on a journalist and a key police ally. No, Naomi flipped pages, reading forged phone logs and bogus money trails. They fabricated phone records, she said, incredulous. Time-stamped calls to numbers we've never dialed. Bank transfers to accounts we've never touched. It's all invented. Leah jabbed a date. This time-stamp is wrong. I was in processing then. On camera. They're rushing, Naomi murmured. Doesn't matter, Leah shot back bitterly. They control the narrative, the evidence, the courts. Footsteps echoed. Chief Coulter appeared, baton tapping his palm, savoring the moment. Quite a night, he said. Journalist nearly killed. A friend of yours loses everything in a suspicious fire. A respected retired judge claiming his home's been ransacked. He tusked. Our little town is just full of tragedies these days. He slid copies of the charges through. Good thing we have you two to blame. Naomi stared up at him. We've been in your cells the whole time. That's never stopped a good conspiracy theory, Coulter replied smoothly. You'd be amazed what scared witnesses will sign when they think it'll keep them safe. People are already swearing they heard you planning retaliation during visits. Leah's hands crumpled the papers. You know that's a lie. I know it's useful. He leaned closer. You're being transferred to a state maximum security facility tomorrow. Can't have dangerous arsonists and attempted murderers in our cozy little jail. Now can we? He straightened. Enjoy your last night in Brookridge, Agents Mitchell. His footsteps faded, leaving silence. Leah sank onto the bunk. They're not even trying to make it believable anymore. Naomi looked at the forged evidence. They're panicking, she said quietly. Leah met her eyes. That's when they're most dangerous. Naomi stepped to the bars, reaching for her sister's hand. Their fingers laced, bruised but unbroken. They think this will break us, Leah whispered. then they still don't understand who they started this war with. The van ride to death and warehouse fight. The sound of keys wakes Naomi. 3 officers appear. Travis, Brad, Ty, faces tense with intent. Travis unlocks the cell. "Rise and shine, FBI," he says. "Field trip." Brad grabs Naomi's arm. Ty yanks Leah up. Leah steadies her voice. "Where are you taking us?" Ty grins. "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere nobody's going to interrupt our little talk." The halls are empty, lights off, no witnesses. Outside waits a windowless, white van. Brad shoves Naomi. "In!" Inside the dark, metal-lined van, the engine hums. Travis calls through the grate. "You really thought those little badges made you untouchable?" Naomi answers. "We thought the law meant something. We were wrong." Brad squeezes her arm. "Still got a smart mouth." Leah fires back at him. "Is that how you taught Maria Rodriguez? Or James Washington?" Brad freezes. The road grows rough. Branches scrape the van. Travis laughs. "Nobody knows where you are. By morning, y'all will just be names on a missing persons report." Leah replies, "People will look for us." Travis, "Community? They're already scared." Naomi taps Leah's fingers, their old signal. "Stay alert." The van stops at a decrepit warehouse by the swamp. Ty smirks. "Home sweet home." Inside the warehouse, Travis circles them. "You had options. Could have played nice. But no, you had to get uppity." Leah answers, "You assaulted us. You arrested us because we wouldn't let you touch us." Travis smiles. "That's the difference between how you tell it and how the paperwork tells it." Naomi confronts him. "You think you can rewrite reality." He yanks her hair, presses his gun to her temple. "Any last words, Agent, before the Gators get their turn?" Naomi laughs. Travis snaps. "What's funny? You need a gun, 2 friends, an empty building, and you still don't feel big enough. Just shoot her and be done," Brad mutters. While they argue, Leah quietly works a hidden hairpin into her cuffs. Click. Travis swings the gun. Naomi drops, dodging the blow. At that exact moment, Leah explodes into motion, twisting Ty's wrist. Naomi sweeps Brad's knee. Chaos erupts. Brad grabs Leah. She headbutts him, his nose crunching. Ty reaches for a baton. Naomi kicks it away. Travis swings wildly. Naomi slips his punches and strikes his jaw. Brad draws a hidden gun. Leah slaps his wrist. The shot goes wild. Naomi wrenches his arm, sending the gun skidding away. Ty charges again. Leah sidesteps, hurling him into a steel column. Travis collapses, dazed. Leah cuffs him with his own restraints. "How's it feel," she murmurs, "to not be the one holding the key?" Travis pants, eyes full of panic. "You think this changes anything? You think anyone's going to believe you over us?" Naomi leans in. "Oh, we're not asking them to believe us." She reaches for the tiny device hidden in her boot. "We're going to make them listen to you." The whole world watching Naomi's fingers closed around the small device sewn into the lining of her boot. It was about the size of a matchbox, matte black, unremarkable. It had ridden with her through raids and stakeouts, through interviews in hostile cities, through nights spent documenting quiet violence. She'd never used it like this. She straightened, breathing hard, and held Travis's gaze as she peeled back the hem of her jeans and pulled the device free. "What is that?" he slurred, squinting. "Your confession booth," she said. She pressed her thumb into the recessed button on the side. A tiny red light winked to life, glowing like an ember in the dim warehouse. Leah moved without needing instruction, scanning the space until she found a fallen crate with a relatively flat surface and a clear line of sight. Naomi set the device down carefully, angling it to capture Travis on his knees, wrist cuffed behind him, and both Brad and Ty sprawled on the floor in various states of pain and unconsciousness. The light blinked steadily. "Everything you say from this moment on," Naomi said quietly, "is streaming to FBI servers." She reached into the hidden pocket of her waistband and pulled out her phone, cracked but not dead, and held it where he could see the screen. The app interface wasn't fancy. It didn't need to be. It showed one simple, devastating truth. Could-it-er-for-an uplink active. Travis's face went slack. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice had lost some of its swagger. Naomi tilted the screen so he could see the timer counting up, the tiny latency indicator, the status bar, signal stable. You really want to bet your freedom on whether I'm bluffing? She asked. Across town, in the station, the live feed popped into existence on a secure terminal in a forgotten corner of the FBI Civil Rights Division's monitoring system. It would have sat there in quiet, dutiful recording for some analyst to review later, if not for the second alert. External stream request, routed via secure link. Back at the station, Officer Jenna Morales sat alone at her desk, the blue glow of a monitor painting tired shadows under her eyes. She'd been refreshing a department incident log, trying to track where Travis and his crew had gone, when a notification bloomed in the corner of her screen. Live feed, source, Mitchell, N. Her heart leapt to her throat. She clicked. The warehouse materialized on her screen, grainy but unmistakable. Travis on his knees, the Mitchell sisters standing over him. Brad and Ty collapsed on the ground. "Oh my God," she breathed. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, routing the stream to a new window, duplicating it, creating anonymous links. She'd rehearsed this in her head 100 times in 100 different fantasies of justice that never came. Now it was here. She opened a browser and, without using any login tied directly to her, dropped the feed into social media. Anonymous tip, watch this now. Brookridge PD corruption exposed. Inside the warehouse, oblivious to the circuits lighting up across the internet, Travis glared at the blinking device. "You think anybody's going to believe this?" he spat. "You jumped us. You attacked officers. Camera doesn't show what happened before." Leah stepped into frame, the shadows carving hard lines into her face. "You mean the part where you stalked us at a bar, grabbed us, slapped me, cuffed us, and dragged us out in front of half the town?" she asked. "The part where you bragged about framing black families for years?" Sweat beaded on Travis's forehead. "That's not what happened." "Then tell us what did," Naomi said. "Face the camera. Tell the world how it's always been your town, your rules. Tell them about natural order." Brad groaned from the floor. "Don't say another word, Travis. Lawyer up." "Lawyer," Leah repeated softly. "Like the ones who look the other way when you planted evidence. The ones who watch black kids vanish into the system because they must have done something?" Travis's eyes flicked from the camera to Naomi, to the dark corners of the warehouse, like he was searching for an exit that didn't exist. "You think you can trick me into some recorded sob story?" he sneered. "You think anyone up the chain gives a damn? They've known. They've always known." Naomi's breath hitched. "What do you mean?" He laughed, short, ugly. "Y'all really think you caught the big fish? Chief Colder? Cute. You know how many joint task forces we've been on? How many federal grants?" His lips curled. "You think your precious bureau didn't notice the numbers?" Leah's heart hammered. "ASAC Keene knew," she said carefully. Travis's eyebrows twitched. "Course he knew," he said too fast. "He told us himself you two were trouble. Called from his nice little office. Said to teach you a lesson. Said he'd make sure it went away if we kept our mouths shut." The words dropped into the air like stones. Naomi felt a tremor run through her. "You're saying," she said slowly, "that a senior FBI supervisor told you to silence us, that he knew what you were doing and chose to protect you." Travis realized too late what he'd admitted. Rage flared in his eyes. "You set me up," he snarled, jerking against the cuffs. "You little—" "No," Leah cut in. "We didn't set you up. We gave you a chance to tell the truth." "Everything you're saying," Naomi added, voice steady now, "is the truth you've been living." At the station, Morales watched the view count climb. First a few dozen, then hundreds, then thousands. She shared the link again, this time directly to reporters she trusted, people she'd followed quietly for years. Civil rights bloggers, local TV journalists, a regional newspaper's investigative desk. She added no commentary, only 3 words. It's all true. Her phone buzzed with messages she didn't read. The station around her was slowly stirring, officers checking email, grumbling over coffee. None of them had noticed yet, but they would, and by then it would be too late. Headlines began to spin themselves in real time in comment sections and quote tweets. Brookridge cops caught on live confession stream. Racist sergeant brags about framed black families. FBI collusion hinted in small-town corruption case. Back in the warehouse, Naomi took a slow step closer to Travis. You say nobody cares, she said. You say they all know. Then why are you sweating? He glared up at her, chest heaving. You think some stupid video's gonna fix a damn thing? You really think people out there want to believe you? They'll say it's staged, deep-faked. They'll say you edited it to make us look bad. We didn't need to make you look bad, Leah said. You did that yourself. She glanced at the device. The blinking light reflected in her eyes. Tell us about the quotas, she said. About targeting specific neighborhoods. About making examples out of black families so everyone else falls into line. He squeezed his eyes shut, jaw clenched. Someone has to keep those areas under control, he snarled. Chief knows it. Department knows it. Hell, your FBI knows it. That's why they keep sending us grants. Why do you think your boss warned us when you started poking around? Naomi felt something inside her go very still. Say his name, she said. Travis opened his eyes, hatred burning in them. Keen, he spat. That what you want? Happy now? Outside the warehouse, far-off sirens began to rise. Not the aimless howl of ambulances, the coordinated wail of multiple units converging. Leah's head snapped toward the sound. Naomi's lips curved in a grim, fierce line. Happy? She said. No. She nodded toward the small device. But satisfied? Getting there? At the station, Morales heard it. A layered chorus of sirens building from multiple directions. Her monitor flashed new alerts from state dispatch. Units deployed, supporting federal warrant execution. She stood slowly, heart pounding, fingers hovering above the keyboard. She watched the feed as flashing lights splashed against the cracked warehouse windows behind Travis. Shadows moved outside, dark figures with disciplined precision. They were here. A door in the station banged open behind her. Someone called her name. She closed the external stream window, leaving the recording server connection running, and turned just as another officer rushed past, breathless. Morales, you see this? He asked, waving his phone. A snippet of the very feed she'd shared glowed on the screen. They got Travis on a live stream. Chief's losing his mind. Feds are swarming the South Road. She forced her expression into shocked confusion. What? Alive? What? He was too distracted to notice her act. They say it's everywhere. News, socials, you name it. Chief's on the phone yelling about containment. She glanced once more at her own monitor, where the warehouse still played on a small inset. Travis shouting, sister standing tall. Looks like the truth got out, she murmured. The warehouse doors blew inward with a crash that shook the building. The sound of splintering wood and shouted commands filled the air. Federal agents, don't move! Naomi and Leah instinctively raised their hands, stepping back from Travis. Red dots from rifle-mounted lights flickered briefly across them before moving on, targeting the men on the floor. On your faces! A voice barked at Brad and Ty. Hands where we can see them! Brad whimpered through gritted teeth, cradling his ruined arm as agents pulled him to the ground and cuffed him with professional efficiency. Ty, groggy but conscious, tried to protest, but an agent's knee pinned him before he could roll. A senior agent moved into the frame of the uplink camera, his vest marked with big white letters. FBI. He took in the scene. Travis kneeling in cuffs, the sisters battered but unbroken, the fallen weapons scattered across the concrete. His gaze landed on the small device with the blinking red light. "Is this the source?" he asked. Naomi nodded once. "Live uplink. External mirror. He's been confessing for a while." The agent's jaw tightened. "Good." He turned to Travis. "Sergeant Travis Hollins," he said, voice carrying the weight of formal procedure. "You are under arrest for conspiracy, civil rights violations under color of law, kidnapping, attempted murder, and a growing list of other charges we'll happily read you later." Travis thrashed against the cuffs, voice breaking with panic and rage. "You can't do this," he shouted. "I'm a police officer." "Not anymore," Leah said quietly. His gaze snapped to her, eyes wild. "You think you won? You think this changes what this town is?" Naomi stepped closer to the camera, making sure every viewer could see her face, hear her words. "No," she said, "we don't think this changes what this town is. We think it changes who gets to tell the story." Outside, sirens still wailed. Helicopter blades thudded in the distance. Phones buzzed in pockets across Brookridge and far beyond, screens lighting up with the same video. In living rooms and kitchens, in hospital waiting rooms and late-night buses, people watched a drunk, bloodied sergeant rant about keeping those neighborhoods in check, about planted evidence, about an FBI supervisor who told him to teach them a lesson, people who had filed complaints and been ignored, people whose loved ones had been locked away, people who had heard rumors but never seen proof. Now they had proof. In the warehouse, agents began leading Brad and Ty out, their orange evidence markers already being placed near every weapon, every shell casing, every scuff on the floor. Technicians snapped photos. One of them carefully picked up the small uplink device and cradled it like the fragile, explosive thing it was. "Agents Mitchell," the senior agent said, turning back to the sisters, his gaze softening just a fraction. "You're coming with us. You both need medical attention, and statements, and lawyers." Naomi nodded, a tremor finally working its way into her muscles as the adrenaline ebbed. Leah swayed, catching herself on her sister's shoulder. As they walked toward the open doors, the humid night air rolled over them. Outside, the scene was chaos. Federal SUVs, state patrol cars, flashing lights painting the swamp in red and blue. Reporters had already started arriving, cameras held high, voices tumbling over one another. "Agents Mitchell, is it true? Did an FBI supervisor? Do you have more recordings of—" The sisters didn't answer yet. Their job for this moment was simpler. Walk out alive. Behind them, Travis's voice carried one last time, raw and shrill. "This is all lies, you hear me? It's all lies." Naomi stopped just long enough to glance back at the camera, at the blinking red light, at the man who had spent his career deciding which truth mattered and which disappeared into paperwork. "Funny thing about lies," she said, more to the watching world than to him. "They don't survive bright light very well." She turned toward the waiting vehicles, toward the swarm of questions, toward the tidal wave of consequences racing toward Brookridge. The feed kept streaming, and for once, the people who had been silenced the longest were not the ones being cut off mid-sentence. Collapse of the corrupt system. The sun rose over Brookridge as if trying to cleanse a town that finally couldn't hide anymore. By 8 a.m., the police station was surrounded by federal SUVs and satellite trucks. Naomi and Leah watched from a government sedan, both bruised but steady. "This feels surreal," Leah murmured. Naomi replied softly, "That's what it looks like, when a machine finally gets cracked open." Special Agent Porter approached. "They're about to bring him out. You don't have to be here for this." Naomi met his eyes. "We do." Outside, crowds surged behind barricades holding signs. "Justice for Brookridge, we believe them." Reporters shouted questions when the doors opened. Chief Coulter emerged in cuffs. Chief, do you have anything to say about the allegations of civil rights violations? Did you order evidence to be destroyed? He kept his chin high, but Naomi saw the tremor in his jaw. Then a familiar voice cracked through the crowd. You destroyed my son's life, Mrs. Washington. Another man shouted, You called my nephew a thug and let them beat him half to death. Coulter faltered for the first time before being ushered into the car. Leah whispered, Do you think he knew this day would come? Naomi answered, I think men like him never believe it will, until it does. Across the state, Internal Affairs boxed up Thomas Keene's office. This is unnecessary, he insisted. I cooperated. I brought in diverse agents. You covered for a corrupt department, an agent said, dropping printed emails on his desk. You advised local officers to teach a lesson to 2 agents under your supervision. That's a mischaracterization, Keene whispered. We have your calls, we have their statements, and we have a live stream where your sergeant bragged you were on their side. Shanaipuram. When Keene walked out in cuffs, reporters fired questions. Did you protect abusive officers for political gain? How many cases did you help bury? Do you have anything to say to the agents you abandoned? He flinched but didn't look up. At the county jail, Brad and Ty stood in line wearing orange jumpsuits. Name? Officer, Brad began. You're not an officer here, the intake officer said. Bradley Miller. Occupation? I'm unemployed. Ty whispered, My life is over. A guard replied coldly, Should have thought about that before you helped kidnap federal agents. Elsewhere, Rick Holland sat in holding, battered, watching his drunken confession loop endlessly on TV. Racist sergeant exposed in live confession feed. They twisted it, he yelled. They set me up. The guard turned down the volume without looking at him. Back in Brookridge, the crowd outside the station grew into the thousands. Porter stood beside Naomi and Leah. They're here because of you. Naomi shook her head. They're here because of them. We just gave them something they couldn't be called liars about. They stepped outside into chants of no more fear. Mrs. Washington held a photo of her son James. My boy lost 3 years because of their lies, she said. Today, the whole world sees who the criminals really were. Judge Wilkes, bruised but resolute, spoke into a megaphone. For decades, this town's justice system was turned against the very people it was meant to protect. He glanced at the sisters. They tried to do it again, but this time they picked the wrong women. Then Carlos Vega stepped forward. I lost walls and a roof, he said. But the truth? That's still standing. Officer Jenna Morales walked out carrying her badge in a box. I can't serve in a department built on fear and lies, she said, so I'm helping rebuild it from the outside. She set her badge on the steps. The crowd roared. Porter whispered, They're waiting for you. At the microphones, Naomi looked out at the faces. When they surrounded us in that bar, they thought we were easy prey, she said. They thought we would be quiet. They thought we would walk away in shame. She let the silence stretch. They were wrong. Leah stepped forward. This isn't just about us, she said. This is about every person they terrorized, every traffic stop that turned into a beating, every kid afraid to call 911. They tried to make us disappear, she said. Instead, they exposed themselves. Cheers erupted. Naomi continued. There will be trials, appeals, people who say this is just one bad department. But we know better. This is proof of how dangerous unchecked power is and how necessary it is to keep fighting, filming, speaking. She lifted her chin. Today we got to turn a story of terror into a story of resistance. Leah closed the speech softly. No one is above the law, and no one is beneath justice. The chant thundered again. No more fear! Hands reached for the sisters. Kids stared like they were superheroes. Elders hugged them through tears. Naomi finally let herself feel everything. Pain, rage, and the fierce love that had pulled a whole town into the light. Brookridge was finally walking forward, eyes open. Rebuilding an epilogue. No one is beneath justice. The community hall felt alive in a way it hadn't in years, maybe decades. Evening light spilled through the old windows in soft golden patches, brushing over wooden floors that had heard generations of footsteps, laughter, arguments, and dreams. Now those same floors trembled beneath the weight of bodies, filling every seat, every corner, every inch of space along the walls. People leaned against door frames, stood shoulder to shoulder in the aisles, even lingered outside the open doors to listen. After so much darkness, the town had gathered, finally to breathe in a different kind of air. Maya Green stood at the front, her notebook open on the podium. The bruises along her cheekbone had faded to pale yellow, the kind of discoloration that hinted at past violence, but couldn't dim her spirit. She steadied her voice, letting her gaze sweep the room. "Tomorrow morning," she announced, "the entire nation will read what happened here." Her words resonated like a bell, clear, steady, unflinching. 6 months of investigation, hundreds of interviews, documents the public was never supposed to see, and stories that should have been heard long ago. A murmur rippled across the room. People wiped tears, squeezed hands, clutched their children. Grief mixed with relief, rage mingled with pride. The air felt heavy with truth, but light with hope, as if the whole town had been waiting years for this one moment when silence finally broke. Judge Clarence Wilkes rose next, his tall figure commanding reverent quiet. He walked toward the podium with a slow, deliberate calm, an elder who had lived long enough to see too much, yet remained brave enough to confront it. "For 30 years, he began, I sat on that bench and watched good people get swallowed by a system that had forgotten what justice means." His voice cracked slightly, but he didn't shy away from the falter. "Every time I tried to speak, they threatened my family." So I collected proof instead, patiently, quietly, waiting for someone strong enough to finish what I could not. The crowd erupted in applause, raw, grateful, emotional. Mothers who had lost sons, fathers who had lost jobs, young people raised in fear, elders who remembered segregation. Their voices rose not in anger this time, but in celebration. Jenny Morales stepped forward with updates from the federal task force. Her eyes glistened with exhaustion and relief. 17 officers are indicted so far, she reported. More charges are coming. The FBI's Civil Rights Division will remain here permanently, and the department is being rebuilt from the ground up, with oversight from this community. A cheer surged through the hall, breaking like a wave. For once, accountability didn't feel like a fantasy. It felt real, close enough to touch. Then the room shifted almost instinctively as Danielle and Leah Mitchell entered. Conversations fell away. Phones lifted. People moved aside without being asked. The sisters walked forward slowly, still wearing the clothes from that night at the bar. The symbolic reminder of where this all began. Their bruises were visible, their pain undeniable, but the quiet strength in their posture had the power to hush an entire crowd. Danielle took the podium first. She placed both hands on the wood as though grounding herself. "We didn't come to that bar looking for trouble," she said softly. "We just wanted a quiet night. But what happened to us wasn't random. It wasn't unique. It happened because so many before us were hurt, ignored, or silenced." She scanned the room, her gaze gentle yet fierce. "We weren't the first, and we refused to be the last without justice." Leah stepped beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "They thought we'd break," she said. Her voice carried a deeper ache, one shaped by wounds that hadn't fully healed. "They thought we were just two more black women they could intimidate into disappearing." Ah, ha, ha. She shook her head slowly, her eyes bright with emotion. But we didn't break, and neither did you. This community held on, even when the system tried to crush it. The crowd rose to their feet. Some cried openly. Some reached toward the sisters with trembling hands. Others simply stood in reverent silence. For the first time in years, the town felt like a single heartbeat. Maya returned to the podium, holding up the advance copy of her exposé. Tomorrow, she said, her voice firm, the entire country will know the truth. But what matters most is that you already do. You stood up. You spoke out. You fought back. Judge Wilkes nodded. Now we rebuild, he said, a system worthy of the people it serves. As the gathering finally dispersed, small clusters of neighbors lingered to talk, to plan, to hug, to cry. The sisters walked outside into the warm Louisiana night. It was quiet, but not the silence of fear, not the hush of a town trapped under corruption. This was a peaceful quiet, a healed quiet, a beginning quiet. Danielle exhaled slowly. Leah glanced up at the stars, unbroken, watching, steady. The sisters took each other's hands, their fingers interlocking like they had since childhood. The system hadn't beaten them. The truth had won. And from this moment on, nothing in Brookridge would ever be the same. What happened in Brookridge wasn't just a victory for two sisters. It was a victory for every voice that had been ignored, every family that had been shattered, and every person who ever feared that justice would never come. It proved something powerful, something undeniable. Truth cannot be buried forever. Courage cannot be silenced forever. And when a community finally stands together, corruption doesn't stand a chance. As the dust settles and the guilty face the consequences they spent years avoiding, one truth remains. This fight isn't over. Not here. Not anywhere. That's why stories like this matter. That's why we tell them. To expose the darkness, to honor the survivors, to remind every person watching that justice is not just a word, it's a responsibility. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, if it made you hope, if it reminded you that we still have work to do, then don't let it end here. Hit subscribe right now so you don't miss the next story. Visit the channel, explore the other videos, and continue this journey with us as we shine a light on injustice and uplift the people who refuse to be broken. Because every view, every share, and every subscription helps these stories reach someone who needs to hear them. Thank you for watching. And remember, the fight for justice starts with paying attention.